Hi, this is Andrew bringing you another KeyForge deck reveal. And this deck here, Ainley the Mantible of Riddles, is one that I opened last Sunday at a sealed auction event. So I did not get to play with it. I did manage to play with it online a little bit with my brother-in-law Mark and got in 2 games. It did okay. So that was really fun, and I figured, hey, I should finally go ahead and do a reveal of it. It's quite a fun deck. It has Logos, Mars, and Brobnar. And I think Mars comes up last here, but I think this is the most fun I've had in Mars, actually. So I'm excited to get to that. So we'll go ahead and get going. Ainley, the Mantible of Riddles. All right. So we start off with Brobnar. We have Blood Money. Gives you 2 amber if you can kill the creature that you put it on. Follow the Leader. I think this is my first time getting this card, and it's a really fun card. It's an uncommon, and for the remainder of the turn, each friendly creature may fight. If you have big creatures in a different house, then it's quite good. And if you can play it with a card like Loot the Bodies or War Song, it's quite good. So it's a fun, let's just go get this done card. And next we have Loot the Bodies. Get an amber every time an enemy creature is destroyed on this turn. It's very good in Brobnar. Works well with Punch. 2 punches in here. Those are solid. Good for those elusive or otherwise hard to get creatures. Creatures protected by taunt maybe. And War Song. So this is, you'll notice, I mean, this is, let's see, that's 6 actions in Brobnar, and then an artifact. So we only have 5 slots left for creatures, but these are pretty good actions to have. No anger. I like anger, but this is a pretty decent action set here in Brobnar. And then we get into the creatures. Bumpsy, useful for keeping your opponent off a key. We have 2 copies of Earthshaker. And Earthshaker is kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, it's each creature, so it literally is a double-edged sword. It's going to hit your creatures as well. So the first game I played with this, I got Earthshaker in my hand and ended up discarding it because I had a bunch of 2-power and 3-power creatures out, and it would have done more harm than good. The second time around, I got both of them and was able to each time play them and destroy enemy creatures, but not my own. So don't be afraid to discard this one, but when it comes out at the right time, it's really fantastic. And having a 7-power creature on the board is just really nice. It can do good work. It is great against Sanctum, where they have that armor that you have to get through. So just all around a good card. We have Fire Spitter. Good for helping keep the board clear, and the armor's nice too. And then Lemire Flame Fist, not good in your opening hand. The second game we played, I got this in my opening hand and mulliganed and got it back, and oh well, it's still a 5-power creature. It's not bad, but it is nicer if you get it at the right moment. And that's it for Brobnar. So now on to Logos. We have Interdimensional Graft. If you can use it at the right time, a really powerful card, especially if your opponent gets too far ahead. Phase Shift, always nice to see. Get some other Logos work done, but also prep for a future turn. Remote Access, Artifact Control. You can use an opponent's artifact as if it were yours. So sometimes this just means you get to use a nice, strong effect. And other times, this could mean getting rid of a really powerful, Omni Sacrifice ability or something like that. So, good card. One thing to just be aware of with Remote Access, because it has the amber, printed on it. That's nice. That makes you really want to play it. Because it just says use an opponent's artifact as if it were yours. If they only have one artifact, you are forced to use that artifact. So, if all they have is a Screaming Cave, you get to cycle your deck, for example. You don't have the option to not do that. Scrambler Storm. Gain an amber and your opponent can't play action cards. This is nice. I like, I usually think of logos as expanding my own options. This is an example where they lock down the opponents a little bit. This is a good card. I love it. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but you still get the amber, and sometimes it can really throw your opponent's game off. Next, we have Twin Bolt Emission. Gain amber to deal 2 damage to 2 different creatures. Again, really nice for dealing with those small elusives, and sometimes for just ticking somebody. And this has 3, so that's nice. Important. The damage isn't optional, so if there are 2 creatures on the board, even if both of them are yours, you have to deal that damage. Then we get into our creatures here. We have Bat Drone. Solid, probably not going to stay out very long, but good if it does. Dysania. So this one's worth talking about a little bit because it's rare. Sometimes this is just a 4-power creature, right? When you play it, your opponent discards each of their archived cards, and you gain an amber for each card discarded this way. If your opponent's been doing like a Mars abduction game or something like that, this is really nice for fixing that, getting those creatures into your discard pile, and getting some amber back for it if your opponent has Library of the Damned or some Ganymede Archivists and they're doing a strong archive game. This is also really nice. If I had a deck with a lot of archive abilities and I saw this in my opponent's deck list, I would be pretty concerned. But if your opponent isn't doing a lot of archive, then it's just a 4-power creature, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And then we have Ganymede Archivist, 3-power, reap, archive a card. Really nice if you can keep it on the board. And I think generally people tend to not prioritize this very highly. It seems to me like people are more likely to, for example, target the Bat Drone than this, or if you have this in a deck with Quixo, probably more likely to hit Quixo. And I like that because I like having my Archivist stay out and do work. And then we have the Research Smoko, which is there just to die. You can reap with it, that's nice, but maybe fight with it if it's totally appropriate. And then when it's destroyed, you archive the top card of your deck. Without your opponent seeing it, you get to see it because it's your archives. And importantly, if your deck is empty, then that effect fizzles, but that's fine. Yeah, I like having it. And then we have Titan Mechanic, 6-power, so pretty big creature for Logos. And while it's on a flank, each key costs -1. Yeah, that can be strong. It's double-edged again. If it's out there at the wrong moment, then your opponent gets a discount as well. So just be aware of that. All right, now into Mars. So like I said, this is probably one of the most fun decks I've had with Mars. I've had a lot of Mars decks before that want to have big creatures and lock down the board and make keys cost more, and that's I think a strong archetype in Mars. This one is a little bit more combo-y, as you'll see, and plays a little faster, but is a little more vulnerable. So we start with Mothership Support, gain an amber, and for each friendly ready Mars creature, you deal 2 damage to a creature. So more direct damage. This deck has a lot of direct damage, which I like to see. It's it's not sustainable board control, but if you have enough of it, it can help a lot and get rid of those elusives. Yeah, and you can choose a different creature each time. So if your opponent has a really giant Sanctum creature you want to kill, this could help. And if your opponent has a bunch of little elusive creatures, this could help. But important to notice, it's each friendly ready Mars creature. So you do need to have Mars creatures on the board, something I often feel like I have trouble with. But last night playing with this, it went pretty well. Orbital Bombardment, very similar effect, except instead of friendly ready, it's the ones that are in your hand. So you reveal Mars cards from your hand, and then do damage based on those. I had a situation last night where I had both these in my hand. I was able to use the Orbital Bombardment, show the Mothership Support and a creature, and then play the Mothership and do damage based on the creatures that were already on the board, and that's a lot of damage. Soft Landing. The next creature or artifact you play this turn enters play ready. That's always nice. There's a discussion thread in Facebook where somebody was saying that Squawker is always better than Soft Landing, and I can see where they're coming from. It gains you the amber, and it's useful potentially even if you don't have creatures out, because you can stun a non-Mars creature. But Soft Landing is nice too. If there's certain cards that, like for example, Marauder, which has a play effect that wants creatures to be ready. In this case, it would actually count itself, right? Because it would enter play ready. So it would already be ready when the play effect is resolved. So there are some times where this is better. Also, this can be used on artifacts, which didn't matter much in this deck, but occasionally could matter. So anyway, but always nice to be able to get your Mars creatures out ready. They like that. This is the one Mars artifact in this deck is Sniffer. Gains you an amber when you play it, and when you use it, creatures lose elusive for that turn. So it didn't end up mattering much in the games I played, but gained an amber, so not bad. And in certain situations, it could be quite strong. All right, and now we're into creatures. So we have Blip It, 2 power, so it's pretty wimpy. It needs you to have board control for it to stay out. It's probably a high priority target, but when you reap with it, the next Mars creature you play this turn enters play ready. So this wants you to have more Mars creatures. And notice we've gotten through 4 cards, so that means we're going to go through 8 Mars creatures here. That's pretty good. So yeah, Blip It likes to have other Mars creatures, and in this deck we do. Mind Warper, 2 power, elusive. So it's slow steal. I don't love this card. It's not bad. Sometimes it can keep your opponent from forging. That's nice, but generally speaking, it's just a steal that means you have to fight too. So kind of weird. And then we have 2 copies of Tunk, and for some reason I always feel like, oh, Tunk is a weak, boring card, but it's actually pretty strong. 6 power is nice, and that armor is nice too. So that means you can fight a 6 power creature like an opponent's Titan Mechanic or something like that, kill it, and the Tunk will just be at 5 damage. And then if you play another Mars creature, you're going to fully heal it. If you have that out and you use it to fight something, you reap with the Blip It, and then you play another Mars creature like Mind Warper, it's going to get fully healed, and your next Mars creature is coming out ready. It's pretty great. So yeah, Tunks are nice. Next we have Ulik Megamouth, 3 power, and when it fights or reaps, you use a friendly non-Mars creature. And I love that it's use, because that means if you need to fight with it, you can, but if there's nothing out on the board, you get an extra reap, essentially, right? You reap with this, and you get to reap with one of your other creatures, and that's nice. I mean, that's great. It's essentially, in that sense, it's almost like a more flexible Do Fairy, right? Where that one you reap and you get 2 instead of 1. Here you have that option. You can reap with another creature. It just depends on you having another creature. But if you have board control, it's very strong. Second to last, or no, third to last, I guess, we have Vizima Thinktrone, 3 power. This one, the reap effect, I usually find is not something I care about. Occasionally it is, but usually it's just not something I'd want to do. So anyway, but you can reap or fight with it, and it's not terrible. Then we have Ixili Marauder. I find this usually doesn't work out great, but in this deck, I was able to keep some Mars creatures on the board long enough that when I played the Marauder, it got some good use. So good to remember, I guess, that sometimes this can actually be quite useful. And potentially keep people off keys and get big. And then we have Zorg, lastly. And Zorg's fun. Zorg is uncommon, 7 power, so another 7 power creature here in this deck. And Zorg enters play stunned, so that's a liability. but before it fights, you stun the creature it's fighting and each of that creature's neighbors. The before fight is important because that means that effect is going to take place even if Zorg is killed in the fight. And, you know, because he's 7 power, there's a good chance he's going to kill that creature. It is important to remember that even when the creature you're fighting is stunned, it's still going to deal damage back. So this doesn't protect Zorg from the damage. It's just a nice board control effect. So, although if you have the Zorg out, there's a decent chance, you know, that you're controlling the board by just wiping their creatures from it. So, anyway, so yeah, I really enjoyed playing with this deck. I feel like it has really good synergy in the Mars side, a lot of good direct damage overall, and decently big creatures that helped me keep the board clear. So, really good stuff, and I hope you enjoyed this video and that you keep forging.